You might be living in either of these particular lives. One, a mundane life, or a holistic life. So, a mundane life is this life that a lot of people always say, my life is boring, my life is repetitive, I don't feel as if there's juice in life. I don't even feel as if maybe my work or life is even fulfilling. I'm just living and coexisting, So that is a mundane life. And on the other hand, a holistic life is this life that we always dream to have. A life which is very fulfilling, very satisfying. You always feel like, I can do more, I can do better, There's a space for growth, a space for creativity. That is a fulfilled life because it completely aligns with you. So on this particular video, I'm going to teach you, if you are in a mundane life, how to move from a mundane life to a holistic life. And if you're already in a holistic life, I'm going to show you how to make it better, more sweeter, and to have tools and systems on how to maintain it forever. This is how I'm going to divide some segment on this video so that it can help us to accomplish that. So the first bit, we're going to look at what is a holistic life. What are some of the aspects that forms a holistic life? That is the first bit. And then the second bit, we're going to look at what are some of the problems that hinder us from having a holistic life. And I'm going to teach you about the two types of problems, right? And then the last bit, we're going to look at those particular tools that will enable you to live this particular holistic and fulfilling life. But before we dive into that conversation, allow me to introduce myself to you. My name is Anne-Marie, and I'm a career coach with 10 years of experience doing this. And you know what? I've helped a lot of middle-level career professionals to move from a mundane life to a holistic life, like what you're going to do in this particular video. So let's dive into this. I want us to first start by looking at what is a holistic life and what are these particular components? What are these particular aspects that forms a holistic life? So a holistic life is formed from three main components or aspects. The first one is what you call the personal aspect. The second one is what you call the vocational aspect. And the third one is what you call the social status. Just allow me to get deep into them so that you can be able to understand them a bit, right? So the personal aspect, the first one, is that description of you minus your job titles, minus your education, minus your social status. What remains? And when I'm teaching this topic, I always ask my students, can you describe yourself? Then you write, my name is Anne-Marie. I am a career coach at High Advice Careers. I am a mother. I have extra until the end, right? And then out of that description that you have written, I now tell you, can you remove anywhere that talks about your education, anywhere that talks about your work, and anywhere that talks about you belonging to a particular setup in a society? What it remains is your personal aspect. We say that your personal aspect is your own identity. Who are you? This includes the values that you hold in life, right? The beliefs that you have in life, right? And that particular thing that we call self-awareness about you. Those components forms your personal aspect. Who am I? If you look at what I've just described, is that little girl who was Anne-Marie, minus her education, minus her job, minus her being in a particular group of people or girls, right? That girl's description that people used to say, that girl looks like this, that girl is very respectful. Now, that is your personal aspect. Let's look at the second aspect, is what we call the vocational aspect. When you talk about the vocational aspect, oh my God, I don't think I need to teach anybody about this because this is what we think is our identity. It revolves around two things. It revolves around your work and around your education. And I think most of the time when we are having a definition of us, we always focus on our vocational aspect. My name is Anne-Marie. I'm a career coach with this particular background in terms of my education. That's what we usually take ourselves as. So yes, that is what we call the vocational aspect. And then you have the last aspect, is what we call the social status. We always say human beings are social beings by nature. And to be very honest, it is true. We love to belong in a community of people, either friends, either family, or even a social setup. And that is why we'll always look to have a place for identity. So you might think that, Why am I really focusing on looking at my identity in terms of where the social setup? But I think I've told you we are social being by nature, right? So yes, it is an aspect, and it's good you appreciate that. Okay, for me to be holistic, yes, I need to have a social part of me. So when you look at a holistic life, it revolves around those three things that we have just defined. It revolves around your personal, who are you? It revolves around your vocational, your education, your experience, what you do, and it revolves around your social status. Where do you belong to? Your friends, your family, your colleagues, that sense of belonging to a particular group. We tend to focus our life in one aspect. And I think we can all agree with me today that most of the time we tend to focus in the vocation. If I'm not at work, I'm at school advancing on my papers, right? The big part of us tend to purely put our attention and focus in the vocational aspect. Is it wrong? No. It's not wrong. We say the vocational aspect is the key aspects among all the aspects in a holistic life. And let me explain a bit of that. The vocational aspect has a reward. What is the reward? Money, right? For you to have a particular personal aspect, you might need some resources. For you to belong in a social and be comfortable, you might need the financial capacity. So hence, the vocational bit tends to be a bit stronger because it's the one that enables the rest of the aspects. And that is why some years back ago, we used to talk about something that is called work-life balance, right? I think some of you have heard about this conversation of work-life balance. But nowadays, we are not talking about work-life balance because you can never put them all at a balance. Remember, one is a bit higher, right? Nowadays, we talk about life alignment. When we talk about alignment, it means there are some days my personal aspect will be higher than vocational aspects. There's some days my vocational aspect will be higher than the rest of the aspects. There's some days my social status will be higher than the other aspects, right? And then let me just give an example so that you can understand this. During holidays, your personal and social aspects tend to go high than the vocational aspect. When you have deadline, for example, anytime towards an audit, you are highly needed in your job. So hence, your vocational aspect by then will go high. You'll invest more time in your vocational aspect than the rest of the aspect. But at the end of the day, for you to have this holistic life, it means you just need to understand, where do I adjust one aspect to go high and another aspect to go low? And at the end of the day, all my aspects will be aligned and they'll be at par. That is what we call a holistic life. So now let's look at what are some of the things that make us or hinder us to have this particular holistic life? Because yes, we have seen we need to have the personal bit. My identity needs to be up. I need to work on it, right? We have seen I need to work on my work. We have seen I need to work on my social, the people around me, the friends, the charmers that I go for women. I need to work around that social belonging of myself. We have seen all that. But what are some of the issues that really hinder us from having this particular holistic life? Now, I want to get into the problems. And I've told you when I was doing my introduction, I told you we're going to divide these problems into two segments so that we can be able to understand them clearly and we can see what we can work on and what we cannot work on. And we can be able even to see what we think we cannot work on. How do we create ways and methodologies to work around them? So we have two problems. I say this because I'm a career coach. Let me just use the word career, right? Good. So we have two problems in careers and even in life. The first problem is what we call the gravity problem. And the second problem is what we call the non-gravity problem. Just allow me to put you a bit into the definition so that you can be able to understand more. We say a gravity problem is a problem which is not actionable, right? I want you to see that. A problem that you cannot act on. So in another word, a gravity problem is not just a problem, but it is a situation. Correct? Good. And a non-gravity problem is a problem which is actionable. We formulate that problem. And a bit of it, we look at it and we say, I don't think I have a problem there. but there is a problem, right? Sometimes you look at it and you're like, I don't think I can solve this. But you can solve it because it is an ungravity problem. Let's start with the gravity problem. And I want to give an example so that we can all understand this. I give you a bicycle, right? And I tell you, I take you somewhere in a mountain, a very slopey mountain, a very slippery mountain, right? And let's assume this is the mountain. I hope you can see my hand, right? This is the mountain. And you are down here with your bicycle. And the goal is, or my task to you is, I want you to reach at the top of this particular mountain, right? And I want you to cycle. I don't want you to walk. Neither I don't want you to push your bicycle. So when you're down here, and then you're cycling your bicycle, you might be able to cycle a bit of it until here. And then what happened? You drop back because of gravity and it's too steep, right? Then you're like, you know what? I can do this. Then again, you pick up your bike. Then you cycle, you move from here, you go again to this point, you come back. You do the same. By the time you're dropping back on the 5th time, just be honest with me. How will it be? One, maybe the bicycle will be completely ruined. Number two, you'll be, you'll have already despaired. You look at me and tell me, Anne-Marie, what is this that you're giving me? I don't think it's possible, right? And of course, number three, you'll be extremely weary. And that is what you call a gravity problem. A gravity problem is like you are here with the bicycle and you're thinking to yourself that I can be able to cycle my bicycle against this slopey mountain, and you keep on pushing, you drop. You keep on pushing, you drop. So at the end of the day, you will despair and you will say, it is impossible. Let me just give up. I can never get a promotion. Let me just drop that. It's for other people. Me, I just think what I have right now in terms of my job, that is it. I can't grow out of this particular cadre. Me, this is my fate. That's the word that we always use, right? Yeah, but I usually say, it is because you're fighting with a gravity problem. It will always win. There's this thing that we always say, and I know some of you have heard, you can never fight the city hall. I don't want to say it loud, but it's true. City hall will win, you'll lose. So when you realize that the problem is gravity, we always say, because this is a mountain, the goal is for you to reach here. That is the goal, right? So what you just need to do is to understand, because I can't really go against the gravity, I can't really go against the slopey mountain, I can look for other methodologies. My goal is to reach here. So what can I do? I can get paths round the mountain, round the mountain, round the mountain. It will take time, good. It will not look as short as if you went against the gravity, round the mountain, and at the end of the day, you reach here. So those are what you call gravity problem. They are situation. You can't fight them. You can't change them. What you just need to look at it, you open your eyes wider and you ask yourself, whatever is happening in my job, in a way that I'm not getting promotion, is it a gravity problem or is it an ungravity problem? Let us look at the second type of problems, which we have just said they're called the non-gravity problems, right? These particular problems, we have said, these are problems that are actionable, right? So when we talk about they're actionable, hence they're not situations, so they can be acted on, right? But I'm not saying they're not problems. They are still problems. They are still difficult. They still require you to have courage so that you can be able to get out of them, They still require you to do a lot of learning. They still require support from people or even your own support so that you can be able, to get out of them. And we say some of these particular non-gravity problems are caused by some few issues, and let me mention some of them so that you can even be able to correlate when I'm talking about an ungravity problem. The problems which are influenced, what can come in your mind, what can come into your mind, right? Some of these problems are caused by what we call habits, right? Some of these problems in our career life, they're caused by a particular lack of a skill set, right? Some of these problems are caused by poor communication, of lack of proper communication. Some of them are caused by lack of boundaries. Yes, the conversation that we always talk about in our personal, in our social, and even in vocation, lack of boundaries. Yes, it causes a bit of some non-gravity problem. Some of these problems are caused by some poor decision making that sometimes we do. So if you look at those factors that cause non-gravity problem, you'll just realize that the non-gravity problems are actionable. But when you sit down and you become intentional to realize that I have this particular problem. Now that you know the two types of problems, that is the gravity and then the non-gravity problems, right? I want us to go to each and every aspect of our life and try and maybe give an example or two or three examples of both gravity and the non-gravity problem in those aspects. So let's start with the first aspect, that is the personal aspect, right? Remember we said what is the personal aspect? The personal aspect is you minus the title, minus the education, minus the social bit of you. What remains after all that remains, right? So some of gravity problems on personal aspect, and remember we have said gravity problems are problems that are not actionable. You cannot change. That is the simplest way that we are just trying to say, what is this particular thing that we are calling the gravity problem, all right? Some of these gravity problems in the personal aspect, one, what we call our inner child or our inner worlds, right? These are traumas that we acquired in our lives, and we could have maybe never had any control to change them. And they happened. So they're there. They're marks that we have. They're, some things that we carry with us, but we can never erase them, right? So instead of fighting with them, because you have just said it is a gravity problem, you can't fight against it. Instead of fighting with it, you just need to understand how do you find your way out of it. That is one example. Another example of a gravity problem is being raised up in an environment where your emotions were always suppressed. Yes, I know when I talk about this point, some of you are like, yes, yes, yes. I don't know how many of you have used to experience this. When you are a small child, you raise your voice and then you're told, keep quiet, shut up. You're still a small child. You cannot, voice out yourself. Yes. And of course, I always see that because that makes a lot of people lose confidence in life, because anytime you think I'm in a meeting, I need to speak up. That thing just speaks to you that, hey, I should be shutting up, right? Yes, it is a gravity problem, and it is a problem in the personal aspect. Another gravity problem in the personal aspect is what we call hormonal changes, ageism, and etc. When I just talk about hormonal changes, you can see what I'm just trying to bring about. You can never have control of it, right? You can never have control of ageism. Years are going, we are growing old. So hence, you don't have the power to say, now I'm 40 years old, can I take my back to that 5 years old? Not at all. So what you just need to understand is, yes, I'm at this age, this is what I'm going through. And of course, because it's a gravity problem, I just need to understand what are some of the strategies that can enable me to still be at the same age and things are working out well. So let's look a bit on some of the non-gravity problems around our personal aspects. Let me start with the first one, which is caused by habit. Poor sleeping habits. Yes, I always talk about the poor sleeping habits and people are like, is that now a problem that you really need to consider? Yes. Let's look at this. When you talk about burnout, especially at workspace, burnout is usually comes around, is factored in by so many things. And one of the things is you work too much during the day, right? You go home, maybe you do a bit of unpaid work, right? And then the hours that you sleep are too short. So what happened? By the time you're waking up tomorrow in the morning, you still have the fatigue. Then you go back to the same system. So again, in the evening, you come the same routine, the same system. By the time you're done with even, the first quarter of an year, you just feel like you have done so much. You just feel like, I'm just so tired. I just don't understand what is happening. Yes, sometimes the issue is not work. Sometimes you're not getting enough rest. So that's why we're saying poor sleeping habits are an example of a non-gravity problem. And that's why you said they are actionable, because can you control that? Yes, of course, with making sure that your habits are proper, right? Another example of a non-gravity problem is what we call the negative self-talk. Yeah. I'm not good enough, I can't speak in front of people. Those self-talks that we always talk to ourselves, and of course, they're not positive. They're just making us to be in the same cocoon forever and ever, So yes, can you get over them? Of course you can, by making sure that you have affirmations, right? That's one simple example, neat. By making sure that you do a lot of content, a lot of reading on personal development that will allow you to tap the power within you. So negative self-talk is a non-gravity problem. Another example is poor stress management habits. Yes, we are all, candidates of stress because we always have stress here and there from our jobs, from our personal life, even from our social status. We always carry stress with us. If poorly managed, definitely it will harm you completely in terms of your personal aspects. But if stress is well managed, definitely you'll be able to control that. When you see stress, what do you do among these three things that I'll tell you? Will you be the type of people when stress comes, you run away? Will you be the type of people when stress comes, you fight with the stress? Are you the type of people when stress comes, you kneel down and pray, right? So you need to understand what is your methodology of dealing with stress. If you don't have any, if you're not intentional of understanding which methodology is appropriate for you to deal with stress, then you need to develop one and you need to be intentional about that. So those are some of the examples of gravity and ungravity problem in our personal aspects. Let's dive into the vocational aspect and we look at what are some of the gravity problems and what are some of the non-gravity problems in, again, those situations. So let's start with the gravity problem. The first gravity problem in our vocational life is what we call structure issues, right? Yes. I know most of us work in companies. I know most of us have maybe businesses and they work under a particular controlled framework, right? In that particular industry, right? So the structures, the systems of a particular company, of a particular industry, some might be gravity problem. You can't fight against a system. You can't fight against maybe an industry policy. You can't fight it, right? So mostly what we do is when we try to fight with that, at the end of the day, we harm ourselves and we tend to back off. So that's what we are saying. A system, a structure of a particular industry or a company, it is a gravity problem. Another example of a gravity problem that we always find in our vocational life is what we call a toxic boss. You did not choose your boss. Your boss came in. Your boss was employed. So hence, this person is your boss. This person is a big, big problem, right? But you cannot fire your boss. So what happened? That becomes a gravity problem. And that's why we said, when you understand that it's a gravity problem, you don't fight against because it will win. You don't fight against your boss. Your boss will win, will take up the day. And what will happen? You'll feel frustrated because you know you're right, he's wrong. But when you understand that it's a gravity problem, you just need to understand how else can you be able to get what you want by that person, that boss being toxic. Another example of a gravity problem is what we call leadership biasness. Sometimes you get into a particular space, right? Maybe an industry, maybe a particular office, and they have biasness of the type of people who should be leaders. So here you are already at moving towards middle-level management, right? And you feel like, I want that leadership role. But unfortunately, they are a bit biased. Maybe they don't want this gender. Maybe they don't want this tribe. Maybe they don't want this. So if you try and fight hard with them, you're the person who's going to lose out. So that's why we say, when you understand that, you just need to sit down and ask yourself, how else can I work out? If it is too much for me, can I find another space where I'll not find those particular issues of biasness? If it is the same place, can I maybe even grow in another way, maybe horizontal, in a way that I might not really tend to shoot up to those roles that you know very well that they are extremely biased. So those are some examples of gravity problem in our vocation. Let's now look at some of the non-gravity problem when it comes to our vocational aspect. The first non-gravity problem that we always have is what we call poor productivity, right? Yes, and I know most of the time when I ask people, do you think you're good at your work? Everybody will tell me, yes, I'm very, very good at my work. And I always make this example when I'm doing a corporate training. I always tell people, how many of you think are good at their work? Everybody raises up their hands and they say, me, I'm good at my work. And I ask, how many of you think, not that they're saying they're not good at their work, think that they're not good at their work. They're not good enough at their work. nobody raises up their hands. Not because they'll be judged, not at all, but by the fact that they don't know that they are not good. And if you go to the HR or even somebody who is, their boss, and you ask them, your team is very productive, they look at you and they're like, what do you mean? That's why we say sometimes we don't know if we are not productive or we are productive enough, because maybe what we measure ourselves with in terms of productivity are the KPIs that are there. They're stipulated within the company. You need to hit your targets. If you're maybe in the financial institution, you need to the numbers and all that, But you as an individual, you don't have your own personal KPIs to see if you're growing or not growing. And that's why we are calling it an ungravity problem, because it is actionable. You can analyze by yourself, even without the HR analyzing you. And you can even measure how well am I performing in my work, and what do I need to get in terms of to acquire more so that I can be more better in terms of what I do in my daily scope. The second ungravity problem is what we call lack of proper communication. Yes, we have said non-gravity problem majorly are caused because of some, lack of skills and etc. Sometimes your ideas are not heard in meetings, not because you don't have good ideas. You got the good ideas. Not because you don't have the smartest brain in the room. You have got that one. But because you're not able to voice out yourself, you're not able to articulate yourself, you're not able to articulate your ideas to the rest so that they can be able to buy it, right? And hence, you miss opportunities just because you lack communication. Why is it an ungravity problem? Because it is acquired skill. Another non-gravity problem is what we call lack of a career strategies. I'm not saying that because I'm a career coach. No, but most of the time, we this is how we live in our career most of the time, because I'm also in a career, right? You live to exist and to push by. Yes, with goals. Yes, with goals. Like right now, we're already done with our Q1. Q1 is down. We're not getting to Q2, right? And maybe the goals that you had even set for Q1, you have not even hit even a single one. So you're like, let me drop this goal thing. Let me just call leave, right? Yes. So sometimes we just call leave because we don't have proper strategies. We don't even have a strategy in case Q1 doesn't work. How do I try and rig it up at Q2? We don't have that. If maybe 2-3 weeks, January is not working, February, I'm like, I'm still getting my day-to-day, I'm still paying my bills, I still have a job, let's do this stuff and let's move on, right? So that's why we're saying it's an ungravity problem. Why? Because it's actionable. Let's now dive into the social aspects. And I want us to start with the gravity problem in the social aspect. And allow me to just give again 3 examples on this. The first gravity problem in the social aspect is what we call the family background. We don't choose where we were born, right? I don't think there's anybody who just did an application letter and we're like, I want to be born in this particular family. No, we just find ourselves in families, right? And sometimes these backgrounds, they give us a blueprint which is not much appropriate. Let me use that particular word, right? And you can never change that. You can never change that. What you got from where you were born, the first, let's talk about maybe 13 years in that particular background before you went to high school, that was purely what you got, and that one can never be changed. Neither can it be erased. And that's why we say, if it gave you some wounds, if it gives you, it gave you some traumas, then you just need to understand that that was a gravity problem. And hence, I should not keep on fighting against it. What I just need to understand is, how do I deal with it? Maybe psychologically. Another gravity problem on this is what we call the social judgment. You don't choose to tell people, you know what, people, start judging me. You don't choose that. What happened is you just find yourself, people are judging you and they're having a perception about you. So you cannot fight that. What you just need to understand is, how do you set proper boundaries when people are heavily judging on you? Remember, these people who are judging you, right, are people that you cannot really separate with, because maybe they're family, maybe they're very, very close to you in terms of friends. Maybe they came up from a space where you live, where you grew up. So at the end of the day, these are still your people. But how they're carrying you, how they're judging you is not appropriate. So that is why we're saying it is a gravity problem, because you cannot go and change how they think about you. Another example is what you call distance from supportive relatives, right? Or in simple terms, lack of proper support from the social people who are around you, and especially family, right? You realize that sometimes when you lack that particular support, you tend to feel a bit lonely, you tend to feel a bit rejected. So that brings in some issues when it comes to the personal aspect again, right? So we say you cannot really force people to really support you, especially at spaces where you could have not really decided and said, if you guys cannot support me, let me look for other people who can support you. You cannot do that. So what happened is, it's a fact that is how it was, and it created some damages in you, and of course maybe you struggle with them so much, and that's why we're saying they're gravity, because you could never go back, and by then you could never change any situation. You just had to live by how things were. So those are some examples of gravity problems when it comes to the social aspect. So I want us to look at some of non-gravity problems, right? Of course, I love these non-gravity problems because most of these non-gravity problems, we create them by ourselves, or we don't know. And it's not that we don't know because we don't hear that we need to be attentive with them. We hear, but we tend to kind of ignore. One of it is what we call weak boundaries. Yeah, I know when I talk about this, it's resonating, it's going home to a lot of people where you don't have strong boundaries, So what happened? Anybody wants to get to you, they just get to you the way they want to. So what will happen to your emotional life? It will always be scratched here and there. Can you set boundaries? Yes. But why are you unable to set boundaries? I don't know. That is one. The second thing is what we call people pleasing. It is an ungravity problem. You want to be the darling to everybody. No boundaries, nothing, You want to be that person who comes in and people are like, oh, she has come, she's our bestie, she's it. And at the end of the day, maybe you get out of that space extremely, extremely damaged, right? And of course, the last non-gravity problem in the social aspect is what you call the poor communication, right? Sometimes you are not able to articulate, to communicate, to pass information of what exactly you want. So what happened? Those people who are able to communicate, they take up the day. They win up the way, right? And you are left there wondering, what am I doing? Was I really for this? I wasn't. Why did I not speak up? I don't know. Yes. Can you learn a bit of communication skills? Yes, you can. So those are examples of gravity and non-gravity problem in all those three aspects that we have talked about that makes us holistic. And I think from what we have just discussed on the gravity and the non-gravity problems, you have been able to identify maybe what are some of these problems that I'm struggling with in my personal aspect, right? In my vocational aspect, am I fighting to be able to get a position in our job that is purely not possible because there's gravity problems? Am I, trying to become me and I'm not me because there's a personal gravity problem which is hindering me? Am I trying to fit up in a social setup, right, which does not really align with me? Why? Because in that social aspect, there are so many gravity problems that I can't erase. People have already judged me. I can't have a voice. My boundaries are already maybe weak, right? So am I in that space where I'm trying to fight against a gravity problem, right, which, as per our discussion right now, you can never change a gravity problem. So now let's look at the last bit, the tools that will enable us to be able to live holistically, right? How do you manage to live holistically? What are some of these things that will help you to become, one, intentional in all those aspects? Number two, to be able to look at, these are the gravity problems that I'm having. These are the non-gravity problems that I'm having. And this is how I can start working on them. So let's dive into the tools. When you talk about the three aspects, the personal, vocational, and social, We say sometimes we cannot be able to measure and we cannot be able to, become intentional in them because they are extremely wide. So we are dividing them again into 4 different areas that are 1, measurable, 2, you can be intentional in them, and number 3, you can be able to put some track record to see how you are faring on in all those particular areas. So what are these particular areas? Number 1 is what we call health. Number 2 is what we call work. Number 3 is what we call love. And of course, number 4 is what we call play. Just allow me to take you deep one by one. And one of the things that you just need to understand about these 4 areas is that they'll help us to handle the problems that you're facing in all these aspects. And I'll show you by the time we are winding up on this particular video, right? So allow me to start with the first bit. The first bit is what you call the health. When I talk about the health, this is the picture that I want you to have in your mind. Your health revolves 4 areas. The first is what you call the physical health. The physical health, the me that you're seeing here, I look healthy maybe, the physical health, all right? We have the emotional health. That one you cannot see if I'm emotionally stable or I'm not emotionally stable. Maybe you can just see it by how I react on things, right? And then we have the mental health, right? Again, that one you cannot even see because sometimes I might even hide my mental health a bit, right? It will only get out of hand when it's extremely. So we have the mental health and then we have the spiritual health. So when you talk about health, you look at your physical health, you look at your emotional health, you look at your mental health, and you look at your spiritual health, right? Those 4 things that I've just mentioned, they're measurable, they're intentional. So anytime when you look at your life, and I always give this exercise to my students, anytime when you wake up in the morning, because we're talking about holisticness here, right? And we're trying to balance things. So anytime when you wake up in the morning, the first thing you need to ask yourself, how much time do I invest to work on my physical health, to work on my emotional health, to work on my spiritual health, to work on my mental health? So making sure that within a day, you have a bit of time to check on each and every aspect of your health, of your health. Even if it is just 5 minutes, even if only on your physical health that day you're too busy and you realize, oh, I can't take my walks. Oh, I can't do maybe my morning jogs. Maybe you just have to just eat well. That is working on your physical health, making sure that this body here, which is enabling me to be able to give you this particular video, is good, it's functionable, it's working, it's not sick, right? That is the physical, right? So the first even exercise that I want you to have, you watching this particular video, I just want you to just maybe close your eyes and reflect and ask yourself, within a day or even within a week, how much do I take to invest in my health? Is it something that maybe I do it by an accident? Maybe Sunday going to church, I invest on my spiritual? Is it something maybe I do it by force? Maybe when my emotions are too bad and then now I have to cool down? Is it something maybe I have to do because of pain? Maybe my body is really aching and maybe I could have done an exercise. I could have watched my diet. Things could have been different, right? How much time do I take in a day to invest in my health? When I'm having this conversation of health, this is what I always tell people. Anytime when you talk about igniting the power within you, anytime when you talk about you taking yourself to a state where you are not forced, you are self-driven, one of the area that makes you to feel that flexibility to move is health. Because if you wake up in the morning, maybe start with the spiritual aspect, you maybe pray, or depending from what religion you are from, you just ignite yourself, you reconnect yourself with the nature, you connect yourself with your source, right? And then after there, maybe you just do an exercise. Maybe even if there's some workouts in the house, right? So what happened? It vibrates again your physical body, right? By the time you're leaving that house, your brain is open for new things. Your brain is open for, doing the best. Your brain is open for productivity. Your body is even active to do more and to give more. By the time the day is getting a bit mid, you listen to a bit of a content on emotional intelligence, maybe, or just something to do with personal development because it will cater for mental and emotional. So when you're thinking you're going down, then you spark yourself by reading a book, by listening a content. Oh, it nourishes you again. Then in the afternoon, you have the energy to get back to work. By the time you are reaching the end of the day, of course, your energies are low because you're tired. Of course, generally, maybe you have carried some stress, some pressure. Then you have a technique maybe of releasing the stress or maybe releasing all that pressure by taking some walk, meditating, just having a me time to reflect, to just, release the emotions that you carried during the day, release the pressures that you carried during the day. So what happened? You'll go to bed very, very fresh and ready for tomorrow. That is just an aspect. That is your health. The second thing is what you have talked about, work. And in work, I want you to really look at this in this 2-dimension, right? We have 2 types of work, right? The first work is what we call the paid work. And the second work is what we call the unpaid work, right? So the paid work is what we do to get money, the job that we go, the business that we do, and etc. That's what we call the paid work, right? Then paid work is that work that we do, but we are not paid. So hence, most of the time in our family setup, it's what we call responsibilities, right? I'm from maybe coaching or training. I do my training, right? And because maybe I am a mother, maybe I come home, I cook maybe for my family, right? I take care of my siblings. And then by the time I'm going to bed, I'm extremely tired. And if I may ask somebody at that state by the time they're going to bed, are you tired? Yes, I'm so tired. Why? Because my job was really so demanding today. Your work has made you to be tired? Yes. And of course, you leave it at that point, believing that the thing that has made them to be tired is the paid work. But if you look at it critically, it's not only the paid work. The fact that you have done 2 jobs, you've done your paid work and then paid work, definitely you are tired. For Christ's sake, you'll be tired, So what you need to understand is that all of them are work. And you just need to understand in a day, how much can I handle? And what I cannot handle, I just do what is supposed to be done. I delegate. When you do that, you will make work, both paid and unpaid work, interesting. When you do that, you'll reduce burnout. When you do that, you will reduce the pressures and the anxiety of trying to do so much within just one person. So you need to understand how much is the paid work and how much is the unpaid work, and what can I handle and what can I not handle. What is important, let me handle. What is not important, let me delegate. Again, I want you to have a reflection. I want you to look at your life and I want you to ask yourself, am I handling too much when it comes to my paid work and my unpaid work? Am I maybe doing totally unpaid work, but I'm feeling guilty? It's like I'm not doing anything, right? Those of us who are parents and we don't do the paid work. And anytime we look at ourselves and we feel like I'm useless because I don't bring any money in the table. Maybe my husband, maybe my wife is the one who works. So I just feel like I don't do anything. But you wake up in the morning, you prepare maybe your kids to go to school, you prepare meals, you do cleaning, you do all these. But at the end of the day, you feel empty because you think you have not worked. So let me tell you this particular day that if you're doing either paid or unpaid work, all of them are work, right? The other aspect is what you call play, right? A very, very interesting bit of it, because anytime when I ask people, when was the last time when you did your play? They tell me, last holiday I took my kids out and we went somewhere. We just had a day out with my kids and we just had a lot of fun. I thought that's good. So now give me how the day was. I have 3 kids and I was just looking after them, but I was seeing how excited they were. I was also very excited. And then I asked the person, so who was playing? Was it you or the kids? And then they look at me and they tell me, I think the kids. I was not playing. Yeah, I want to bring something home. Play is that activity that you do, not we do, right? Especially those who are parents, not what we do to our kids, they feel a leisure, not them. But what we do as parents or as an individual, and you just feel as if you have reconnected with yourself. And this is the example that I want to give you for play, because for some of us, especially some of us at my age, I'm very sure we forgot about play. And even you don't know, when I talk about the word play, what is that memory like? So let me just give you a memory like, so that when I talk about that word, you just reconnect with it. Just take yourself back when you are a small child, maybe a girl or a boy, depending on who is watching, all right? And those days that school is closed is holiday, right? And you are not thinking about anything. The only thing that you're thinking is how you'll wake up in the morning, go out, meet with your friends, with your cousins, for those who grew up around cousins, meet with your cousins and play until I don't know what time. That feeling that we used to feel when we are playing with our cousins and our friends, when we were toddlers, that is the feeling that we talk about you need to look for when you're getting play. A feeling where you forget who you are. I think by that age, we never knew who is this and who is this. No, you forget who you are. You forget if you are gender A or gender B. It is you and the game. You and the game and the fun in the game. Time stops. Energy is on another level, and you are totally immersed in that game to a point where even if your parent calls you, you feel like they're punishing you. That is the feeling and the experience that we get in play. So let me even ask you a question. How many of us do something that takes them to that kind of a state of mind and state of an experience? I know, you tell me in the comment section if you do such kind of activities that take you at this particular age. I know most of you will tell me, I can't even remember when that experience, I can't even fathom how that experience was. Now, that is what you need to look for. Why play in our life? Why is play important? We say play is that activity that gives us juice in life. Sometimes life is not, juicy, flavored. No. Most of the experiences that we have in life is a matter of trying, struggling, working hard, trying to get at skill sets, trying to get these. So life is full of a lot of, pushing. But when you do a play, it just makes everything relaxed. So you need to get those moments. Even if it's watching that movie that makes you to go to the zone, you feel relaxed. You feel like, oh, I've just lazied today, Even if it's just having that moment, sitting in your couch the whole afternoon doing nothing. Like, I have a friend who tells me that I just want to do nothing. And I'm like, what do you mean? Yes. If that is that thing that makes you have that experience, even if it's going out with your girlfriends, having the chit chat, or even your boyfriends, having that particular experience, even if it's doing a hike, going to the nature, having that experience, those are the activities that we call play, Let's have our last aspect, which is the fourth one. And this is what we call love, right? And yes, I know when I talk about the word love, the first thing that we just have in our mind is the love that we get, right? Yes, but when you talk about love, we mean two things. The love that we give and the love that we gain. So the give and the gain, right? And when you talk about love, I always teach people and tell them, it is not only the love that we get and give to human being, not at all, but the love that we give and gain to human being, to nature, to even service. That is what we call love, When I talk about love as an aspect that, forms the holistic you, what is the picture that I want to give? There's some people, maybe who have some, kitchen garden or some flower within their compound, right? And anytime they wake up in the morning, or even they just have a bit of time, and they go to those particular plants, they just feel a sense of connection with them. There's some other people who have got maybe some domestic animals, like a pet, that you just find you have deep connection with those animals in a way that you can't sleep without knowing if they're fed well, if they're in the right places, that connection, that love that you show those particular animals, the love that you show the plants, the love that you show either a service that you do, maybe voluntary service that you do somewhere, that is what you talk about love. And when you look at love in that particular dimension, then it stop putting you in a cocoon of I can only give and get love from a human being who are a bit of it, or sometimes they might disappoint, right? So if you just are very open and you look at where else can I find love? Where else can I give love? Then it gives you again some option in case you get a disappointment from a human being. So hence, that is what we call love. So if you look at a holistic you, we have just divided into 4 items that are measurable and you can be intentional on them. Let me just give a recap on them. The first one is what we have talked about, health. The second one is what we have talked about, work. The third one is what we have talked about, play. And of course, the last one is what I was just trying to give a picture of, love. Those aspects, I think you can sit down, you can analyze how you are faring on in those particular aspects, right? Where you feel like you have a problem in those particular aspects, right? And where you feel like you can put more effort in those particular aspects. So allow me again to give you an exercise on these, right? So I want you to create some, I can call them some gauge, all right? So I want you to create a gauge in each and every aspect on that. So you create a gauge for health, you create a gauge for work, you create a gauge for play, you create a gauge for love, right? So out of the starting point here is 0 and the last point here is 100, right? So out of 100, you look at your health and you just internalize and you assess yourself and you ask yourself, between 0 to 100, how much can I rate myself in terms of the time and the resources and me even being intentional with my health? How much do I invest on my health? You shed a bit of how much you invest or you're intentional with your health, right? You again go down and look at the second aspect, which is work. How much do I invest in my work? How much am I intentional in what I do? Do I just do it to finish? Or am I intimate to what I do? Am I intentional in my work that I usually do, right? If it's 20%, share that. If it's 70%, can you share that? And I want you to do an average with paid and then paid work. And don't just say 100% because you work from 8 to 5 and you come and do the unpaid work. No, you can be working that, but it's not meaningful. So it's not quantitative enough, right? So you put work which is meaningful to you. Then you come again to play and you ask yourself, how much am I intentional and how much do I invest in my play? If it is 0, make it 0, leave it at that. And then you come to the last one. How much do I give love? How much do I receive love? All right. Not only, and we have just seen, not only to people, but to things, to animals, to nature. How much do you invest? So I want you to do that small analysis. And then you just look at your cage and you see, where am I going short? Is it my health? Is it my work? Is it my play? Is it my love? Right? Then after you have seen where you are, what we're just talking about, or that particular analysis is a reflection of you, first of all, understanding this is where I stand by today. I want you to have a summary and describe each and every bit where you are and where you stand today. Where do you stand in your health? If it is 20%, can you quantify? Can you analyze that 20%? Can you describe it? After you describe where you are, I want you again to go down there and write where you want to be. For example, I have around 30% and I want to reach around 50%. You are able to see that very clearly in terms of the gap in terms of where you are right now and where you want to go, right? So after you have just quantified where you want to go, just down there, I want you to write, what are some of the ways or some of the things that you're going to do to enable you to reach there? Strategies to move from 30% to 50%. That is the headline, right? Maybe you can use such kind of a headline. Somebody else can use another headline, like maybe things to do to take me from 20% to 30%, whichever headline that will appeal to you, right? And then now you start analyzing. For example, in my health, I look at it holistically, or maybe I've just decided to divide all the 4 areas in my health, and each of them I tried to do a dashboard, a gauge on it, right? So I just tell myself maybe I have a 20% and I want to intentionally go to 60% because I'm realizing the reason why I'm having all these chaos in my life is because my health is a bit low. My emotional health, my mental health, maybe my spiritual is up, right? But my emotional, my mental is typically low. My even physical sometimes is typically low, right? So you set down some of strategies that you do to enable you to reach to that particular point. Maybe in health you can talk about I'll be having maybe some workouts twice in a week or thrice in a week, and then you indicate the days, right? I'll be maybe having quite enough sleep for my mental health, right? You indicate the number of hours that you may be wishing to sleep. I'll be maybe reading maybe one book in 2 weeks, depending on how often you read, all right, or even in 1 month, depending. And these particular books, I'm going to read books that will nourish my emotional aspects, right? Again, that one is check, right? I'll be maybe instead of just having one day for my spiritual life, I'll be engaging every day, maybe this number of minutes on my spiritual life. So you are very specific on how you're going to improve your health. You go again to work. You tell yourself, maybe what I do, I don't find meaning. I'm very busy, day in, day out, morning to evening. You'll find me always busy. But the work that I do, it is not meaningful, right? So maybe I'll start sitting down and pivot on what I do. I analyze. I ask myself where I am. Am I in the right space? Do I need to pivot, right? If I'm in the right space and maybe I have an issue of growth or trajectory, maybe growth, right? I go again, I look at my S curve and I ask myself where I am to maybe starting another S curve. What is required? Is it a skill? I get that. I put it down. Is it maybe an exposure? I put it down. Is it maybe a strategy of me packaging myself in terms of my branding and my visibility? I put it down, right? So again, you look at all those aspects and you try, you analyze methods and ways on how you can be able to move from one particular where you are today into what you envision to have, right? So when you're done with all that, everything is quite clear. Your summaries are clear. Your gauges are clear. Now you pick all the gauges that you have, right? From gauge health, gauge work, gauge health, gauge work, gauge play, and gauge love. You put them together and then you make them or you draw them in form of a dashboard, like what you're seeing on the screen, right? So when they're in form of this particular dashboard, it's now even easy now to tell yourself, this is how my holistic life looks like. It's a bit totally off because I'm only intentional with maybe one aspect. I'm only intentional with maybe one area. And that is the point that will make you now realize, oh, maybe I talk about I have an issue with my work, but maybe with the issue is not work, the issue is play. That is personal. The issue is health. That is personal. Maybe I always complain day in, day out about my boss, about my colleagues. Maybe the issue is not them. Maybe the issue is my social status. That is, maybe I don't have any play. I don't even, my life is a bit limited, all right? So when you have that, or when you have that as a tool, that dashboard as a tool, it will help you to be able to analyze where are you holistically. And those tools that you have just indicated, the dashboard that you have just created, the action points that you have just indicated that you're going to act on so that you improve your dashboard, they're going to remove your life from a mundane life, right? What we've just talked about, that some of us are in a mundane life, right? They're going to remove you from a mundane life all the way to a satisfying, fulfilling, holistic life. As simple as that. So what you just need to do, act on your dashboard. So if this content has highly impacted you, if this content has really given you value and you're like, oh, I think I've learned something from this content, I want you to do me one favor. I want you to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I want you to follow me so that you can be getting more of this particular content anytime I release. And you know what? I also want you to share with your friends so that they can also have the same experience that you have had. So thank you so much, and I hope to see you in my next video.